Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the first GCI team coaching webinar. I so appreciate you being here, especially in the evening time, as we try to accommodate folks all around the country in different time zones. But for tonight's purpose, what we're focusing on are some of the differences between coaching an individual versus coaching a team. Many of us will be in a scenario where we're not only working with one individual, but we may be working with a pastoral team. And in most of our cases, if not all of our cases, we've served as pastors or we are currently serving as a pastor, and we're working with pastoral teams and advisory teams. And these types of coaching skills are transferable as you facilitate and coach those teams. So we've designated tonight as an hour. We may get through the material quicker, which in that way we'll all celebrate. And again, I'll stop at certain points along the way so that you guys can ask questions. Just to give us a roadmap for tonight, we're going to look at what I call an RPI coaching approach. And it's just a simple formula to let you know if you're engaging in a coaching relationship. We're going to look at what the difference is between coaching a group and a team. And there is a difference. And it certainly has a role in the way that you coach the group of people that you're working with. We'll talk about establishing clear team ground rules. One of the things that we'll find in coaching relationships is that the work that you do up front in terms of clarifying and understand what is reality with the group that you're working with has all the difference in terms of the way it's going to be experienced and the work that you'll have to do on the back end. The more work that you do up front to clarify what is real, what the outcome should be, the better the coaching relationship is. So we'll talk about establishing those team ground rules. We'll talk about an alignment principle, making sure that everybody's voice is heard and how to kind of formulate that into the overall team goal. We'll talk about some general team principles. We're going to look at, and probably will spend the greatest amount of time in this area, what to do with team conflict. And that may seem like, well, why would we want to invest so much time there? Well, number one, you guys know this, guys and gals, that when you work with people, there's going to be conflict. And as a coach, I may ask you to do something radical, and that is to embrace conflict in a healthy way, of course, but to see it as a potential ally. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk a little bit about our GCI context and the way that we coach teams, and then some resources that you may want to take advantage of at the very end. And certainly we'll end with some your thoughts, comments, and questions. But certainly when we talk about resources, there's no greater resource than the active presence of the Holy Spirit. So let's start with prayer, and then we'll launch into the rest of the presentation. Father, Son, and Spirit, I thank you for this evening. I thank you for this time that we have together. I thank you for this technology that we can have this sort of meeting. And I just ask, Lord, that you would mediate, just as you always do, person to person, person to group, believer to believer. Spirit, you reside in us. We thank you for that. And I pray that you would take the words. You know what I'm going to say before they even leave my mouth, but I pray that you would, as the high priest, take them, make them beautiful, heal them, offer them to the Father, and give them back as you so do in a way that meets each of us in a way that is going to instruct, inform, encourage, hopefully, and allow us to be effective as we actively participate with you as coaches. It's a privilege, Lord, to coach another human being, to coach another team. And I just ask that you would equip us by your Spirit. And Jesus, we know the why of what we're doing. It is because we are compelled by your love. And we thank you for that love that has included all of us and every person that we'll encounter and work with. So just be with us this evening, inspire it, as you so faithfully do. And we love you and ask this in the good name of Jesus, I pray. Amen. And I'm sure all of you said amen on your end. Just a general guideline, when we talk about coaching relationships, it's a simple formula that always will kind of level set you to make sure as you're going through the coaching relationship that you're actually coaching, and that is RPI, R plus P plus I. That equals coaching, and that is relationship, purpose, and intentionality. And the relationship is the who of what's going on. It's you, it's the other person, or it's the team. But as we talked about in the coach training we did in Ohio, I want you to always consider it to be a triad. That it's you, it's the other person or the one team that you're coaching, and it's the Holy Spirit. And the question, and this will come up multiple times tonight, the question that um, Andrew Purvis was teaching us in his book Crucifixion and Ministry, that has pierced our heart, that many of us ask frequently, is, what are you up to, Lord? And as a coach, um, he's the coach, and so we want to look to him. So it's the who of the relationship. Um, the purpose is the why, and I believe I said this in Ohio, and this is always important to keep in mind, is that people will lose their way if they lose their why. A coaching relationship will lose its way if it loses its why, or it doesn't know its why. And that's why, as a coach, it's important to clarify and re-clarify why you're coaching, why they're involved in the relationship, what the end game is, what is the outcome, and working backwards from that, and bringing that to the forefront of their attention frequently, maybe even starting in every meeting after our time of prayer, and just reminding people why we're in this relationship, what they agreed upon. This brings everybody back into an alignment, and that's really important, that we never lose sight of that as coaches. And then finally, the intentionality, that's the what, the how, and the when. This is the asking of important questions that clarifies and gets people moving forward through action steps. And so these are the types of things like, what's working for you, what's not working for you, what have you done at this point, what step are you willing to take to get you closer to your goal, when do you plan to do that, can I follow up on that, those sorts of things. That is the intentionality of coaching. And of course, if you lose any part of this equation, um, you lose the effectiveness of what can be in that relationship. So it's always knowing that it's a triad, always reminding the team why we're in this relationship, and thirdly, um, getting the team moving forward to that stated goal that everyone agreed upon. Now, you may be asking, what's the difference between a group and a team? Because all teams are groups, but not all groups are teams. And this table is taken from kind of a business environment, but I think it will spell out just fine for our purposes. A work group is a group that may have some similar aspirations, but it's really about the individual and what they can get out of it. Whereas a team, there's a mutual accountability. Um, I liken it to being in a boat. Everybody's rowing in the same direction. Everybody's in the same boat, and that certainly is reflective in the way that you coach them. A work group is focused on the individual goals, whereas a team is focused on decision making and problem solving for the entire group. And so, in some ways, they're laying aside their individual goals for whatever the group goal is. A work group or a group, they come together to share information and perspectives and best practices, whereas a team is focused on the team goals. So, an interesting question is, what we're doing right now, is this a group or is it a team? Be thinking about that. You might want to place your commentary or your thoughts in the chat room. A group produces individual work products, whereas a team is the collective. Um, a work group, it defines individual roles, responsibilities, and tasks, where um, the team, it's about the team role, the team outcome, the team challenges, and of course, at the very end, we see the purposes are shaped by the team leader with the team members, whereas in a group, the approach is shaped by a manager. Basically, a manager tells them, this is what we're going to do. Whereas in a team, there's there's a camaraderie, there's a collaboration, there is a us and a we approach um, to the team. So you might think of it like being at a lake, and each person has their own canoe. And even though we're canoeing to the same island out in the lake, we may take our own path to get there. We may have our own way of the way that we use the paddle at different speed. Whereas with a team might be all the members in one canoe. And though there may be somebody at the stern that's kind of steering, maybe that's the senior pastor, certainly as a coach, you're helping steer it, but you better have everybody rowing together or else it's not going to be very effective. So sort of a visual of a group versus a team is on the left is a pack of dogs. They're doing their own thing, even though they're moving in the same direction. Whereas the team is they're all latched in together and there's one single unified purpose. And that's where you can really get something done. So, when we come together in a webinar like this is a group format. This is even though um, we may serve some of the same purposes. We're coming together to learn. We may apply certain things in a coaching relationship that somebody else won't. We're going to share best practices. So this is kind of a group training format, but all of us I know work in teams, and I'm sure you see the differences there. In Ohio, I introduced this model as the model that I've adopted for our coaching program. As I told you there, you don't have to choose and use this model. If there's something else that you're familiar with, that you're comfortable with, that is just fine. Again, I just wanted to reiterate um, that you use a model because this will keep you on target. This will keep you coaching and not slipping into too much of other types of disciplines, whether it be counseling or mentoring, even though those are good things and they will play a role in your coaching relationship. By following a model, you'll know that you'll eventually get to a point where you can come to some action steps that move the person or the team forward. So, just as if you were coaching an individual with the team, you'll still use a coaching model. You'll still want to move people if you're using the coach model through the connect phase, where each time as a coach, you're getting the lay of the land, you're getting a feel for where the team is, you're taking their temperature as a team about how things are moving along toward their stated goals. You want to have that authenticity of relationship, that they trust you as a coach. Because if there's not a lot of trust, obviously, it might be limited what you get from them in terms of the information they're willing to share. So there has to be a lot of trust, and that happens through the connect. And this is something in GCI, in our context, just the people that we tend to do this part really, really well. The danger for us is staying in that part and not moving to the outcome phase. And outcome is, of course, where are we going? This is reiterating the purpose, as we talked about in RPI. These are agreed upon goals, whatever that may be, and reminding the team that this is where we're going. Is everybody still on board? Where are we in the process? So it's a way to follow up on what was being done since the last meeting, to find out where we stand, what got done, what didn't, what successes were experienced, what hiccups or challenges came along. That happens in the outcome phase. It's really important because this level sets reality, and we'll talk more about it. It's so important to get to the reality. Of course, the awareness phase is, of course, moving into what's happening, what's not happening. So outcome and awareness kind of feed into one another. Course is charting what we do next and where are we going from here. And between now and our next gathering as a team, what's going to happen. And we might call that action steps. And then the highlights is, if you recall that question I continually asked when we were in Ohio, what did you learn? What did we gain? What were your aha moments? What were your oh no moments? And this is really important. I'll do this at the end of our webinar here tonight. Those aha and oh no's are just enlightening. And so if you can get to those, you want to find those out while you're there, as much as possible. So That's what the coach model looks like. You guys are familiar with this, but I just want to again strongly encourage you to use a model as you're even coaching a team. So I mentioned at the beginning, it's really important to establish and level set expectations, or ground rules might be a way, or core values is another way of saying it. Now, this guy, he obviously got the message but didn't follow along. It's important when working with a team, if you've already got some established ground rules, that if we ever get sideways with the team, or a member of the team gets sideways, you can go back to what everybody agreed upon. And here's a sample of what one team did. These are very general, but it gives you an idea. One team said, here's our working agreement. We're going to absolutely agree to help each other. We're going to be for the other. And so we're looking for ways to come alongside and support our team members. That's a good core value to have. We're going to favor face-to-face communication. Now, in some settings, that may not always be possible, but in most cases, it is. That email, texting, phone calls may play a role, but as much as we possibly do it, we're going to have face-to-face communication. So there's no misunderstanding. You know how emails work. Sometimes things can be taken out of context or misunderstood, which can cause problems with the team. So this particular team said, this is what we're going to do. Thirdly, we're going to be positive with one another as much as possible. We're going to be real. We're going to get to reality, but we're going to keep it positive. Another core value is we're not going to be afraid to say, I don't know. That's a big one. You don't want assumptions made, and you want to, as a coach, because number one, as a coach, you're you're asking questions, but you want to create a space where people are free to dialogue, to ask questions, to say, you know what, I don't really understand what you just said, or what the team's really after here, or my part in what the team's after. Give the space for people to safely ask that. And then finally, raise questions and issues early. That's a key core value, and we're going to talk about that too, because especially if it's conflict, as we get into the conflict section, because I've just found, and I know you have too, avoiding conflict makes it grow. And I've experienced this in a pastoral team setting, that if things are left unsaid, they begin to fester and they show up in unhealthy ways down the line. And in many ways, it can sabotage where the team is going. So if you can get to some of those core issues early on by having an agreement, a memorandum of understanding, a way of saying, this is what we've all agreed to, and this is what we're going to value going forward, I just think it's going to serve you well in the long run. And ultimately, what this is going to do in a team format, I posted a picture on Facebook this evening from my SCP days in Orem, Minnesota, and Jeff Broadnax was in the picture. It was from our basketball volleyball department. And Jeff used to always say in our classes, he talked about synergy, how the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And it always stuck with me that if we're working together, if I, which is me, if I'm bringing the best of the team and you are bringing the best of the team, then we get the very best in that overlap, which is us, which is the team. It's like, I think it was Michael Jordan said, there's no I in team, but there is in win. If I'm bringing my best and you're bringing your best, and we're asking good questions, and we're really, we're collaboratively working together, then it's going to get to that sweet spot where it's us, it's team, as we bring our very best together. I wanted to stop now and share a video. And this video is from one of the authors of Transformational Coaching. And he talks about getting to what's real. It's about a 4 to 5 minute video. It's really well done. And after the video's over, I want to open up the floor to just get your thoughts, any questions that you have so far, and then we'll launch into the next phase. But this is from
Hi, I'm Tim Reel.
Hi,
Let's
I'm Tim
talk about
Reel.
getting to
Let's talk about
reality in
getting
our
to reality
transformational
in our
coaching.
transformational coaching.
Now,
Now,
in our GROW game plan,
in
we
our
talk
GROW
about
game
goal,
plan, we talk
reality,
about
options,
goal,
and real, and we're
reality,
going to
options,
focus
and
on the
real. And we're
R
going to
in
focus on the
this
R in
coaching
this
tip.
coaching tip.
The getting to reality
Getting to
can be
reality
thought of from several
can
different
be thought of
vantage
from
points.
several different
It's
vantage
painting a
points.
picture.
It's
As you
painting a
coach them,
picture.
you are
As you
getting them
coach
to
them,
paint the
you are getting them
clearest
to paint
picture
the
of reality
clearest
that's
picture of
possible.
reality that's possible.
Another way I like to think of it
Another
is
way
that
I
we're
like
going
to
to
think
tour
of
the
it is that
house.
we're
And so
going to tour the
you step into their world, you ask them questions, and by the time you're done, you've pretty much made a tour of the whole situation. We also describe it as going layers deeper. And when we get to reality, we dig down and get the buried treasure underneath the obvious that's on the surface. So asking great reality questions is very important, and I want to encourage you, don't rush through this. Don't assume that as soon as they say something that you know what's really going on, because that's not often the case. And don't assume that they know exactly what's going on, because it's so easy to assume or to take your first impression or a perception and realize a little bit later that that's not reality at all. So great reality questions are gathering facts. There's three kinds of reality questions I like to encourage you to think about. First is just information questions. You're asking them to describe things to you in ways that help you both gather information, begins to put all the pieces of the puzzle, if you want to use another metaphor, on the table. There's awareness questions that lead that leader to discovery and insight. It's the aha or the oh moments that are so important. And then there's the whole action, the idea of asking action questions that move the leader forward in their thinking and their choices. So a couple of great reality questions that I love, or several of them. In what ways have you addressed this issue? Now, quite often when we ask that question from a closed vantage point, we say, have you thought about this? Don't ask questions like that. Ask an open-ended question that says, in what ways have you addressed this issue so far? You could ask questions like, what's working? What's not? There's also what I call the ministry of summarizing and clarifying. And so as they're describing something to you, the ability to simply and concisely repeat back to them what you've heard them say in a way that they go, yeah, that's what I was trying to say, is very helpful. My friend Keith Webb, who's a great coach and a great coach trainer, gave me this tip about what I call great commandment perspectives. We love the verse, what we call the great commandment verse, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And that forms a beautiful framework to walk around an issue and view it from a variety of different perspectives. It become very helpful to get to reality. So you ask the question, what I call the heart questions. Love the Lord your God with all your heart. So you ask questions, heart questions like, what has the Lord been saying to you? What kind of spiritual things you're thinking about? What's your gut telling you? They're intuitive questions. Soul questions are your mind and emotions. And so you're asking them how they're feeling about things. You're asking them how they're perceiving things. Mind questions are gathering information, the different viewpoints, the facts, the reasonable, logical, linear way of looking at a perspective. Strength is what kind of physical resources do you have? How's your health? How's your energy level? How much you're going to need to accomplish this thing? Things like that. And then there's that love your neighbors as yourself, part of the Great Commandment, so beautiful. I call it other shoes and other views. What I mean by that is to stop and say, now, what would your spouse say about this issue? What insight might they give us? Or what would some other leaders in your team give you? Who's some of your favorite mentors or other people in your life that might have spoken to you about this? What insights might they have to give us? Sometimes you even ask them, what are your children saying to you? But as you're walking around this issue, heart, soul, mind, strength, other shoes, other views, it's a beautiful, holistic way to get to reality. And when we get to reality, you're going to come to the place you say, now, is there anything else we need to know? What else do we need to know about this particular issue that's going to serve us? And when they say, no, I think that's the best picture where we're at, that's reality, then you'll know that you've reached a place where you can now move on to options. So do the good work, do the hard work of asking great questions, listening well to get the leader you coach to reality.
Good stuff. I said I would open up your mics. I wanted to get through one more slide, so if you'll bear with me for just a moment. Um, let's talk about alignment principle. When when you're talking about level setting expectations and getting everybody looking toward the target, whatever the outcome is that um, has been agreed upon, that there is a consensus of the Holy Spirit. And again, consensus is a general agreement. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to agree on every little detail. However, there is a general agreement about moving forward to really get the buy-in from the team. You might use what some have called an alignment principle. And ultimately, all this is making sure that everyone's voice is valued and that gets communicated by you and acted out by you as the coach consistently. And, I think I heard Peter Drucker was the one that had said this, that every organization needs one core competence, and that's innovation. And innovation happens when everybody has a contribution to make to the overall team goal. And so, what that looks like when you're coaching a team, you're inviting people to um, give their input, and you're bringing it through kind of a funnel, if you will, or a way of as you're getting these contributions, knowing that some contributions are going to fit the stated goal better than others, but you make sure everybody's been heard, that they feel empowered to speak up. Because what I've seen this happen before in coaching a team, if for some reason, and by the way, back to the stated ground rules, one of the ground rules needs to be that everybody respects other people's opinions, that will listen to them as they state their opinion. Because if somebody is reluctant to share and they stick their toe in the water to share and they get shot down quickly, um, maybe you as a coach think there's a better way, and so you talk over them, or a member of the team feels they have a better idea and they talk over them or disrespect kind of the decision or the opinion of that person before there's a chance, they get a chance to really get it out. What's going to happen? They stick their toe in the water and they're not coming back. They're not going to jump into the deep end in terms of really collaboratively participating on the team. And team dynamics. You'll have some that they need to hear themselves talk a lot. They've got a lot of great ideas, or so they think, and so they're going to speak up quite a bit. And it's important to especially if you've got a group of extrovert and introverts, to make sure the introverts, their voices are heard, that it's safe enough for them to contribute. But then what you have to do um, in coaching is to make sure that it fits sort of the direction of the overall approach or what you agreed to. And the way that alignment looks, and Tom, you'll appreciate that that says Pittsburgh on the, the level here, is you have alignment when you have a common agreement about not only the starting point, but the destination. And everyone is on board with that vision and destination. And there's enough buy in from the team that no one's going to stop the progress unless it is a clear stoppage, work stoppage, if you will, the Holy Spirit. And but hopefully you're doing the work up front through prayer, through a lot of conversation, that there is agreed upon plan. And so once that plan is in place, even though you hold loosely to it, you still work toward that stated goal, unless the Spirit clearly has something else in mind. So let me stop for a moment and get your thoughts, feedback, questions, and your own experience in working with a team. If anything I said jives or it doesn't, or you want to tell a story about something that you've experienced on a team, I'm just going to go ahead and unmute your mics. And if there's anything that you want to state, now would be the time. Any thoughts? And you can go ahead and mute your mic if you want to. Okay. And again, just raise your flag if you have any questions or thoughts. as we go along. Here's a key thing as a coach, and this is where it seems like such a simple thing, but if we're not careful, we'll miss it. When you're coaching a team, the key thing is to get them talking to each other, not you as a coach. What ends up happening, you can get triangulated into people's concepts of what should be done if you're not careful, and you can get them dependent on you. So if you're the coach or you're the senior pastor, and of course in our environments in GCI, we've had pastor centric environments, and I love our pastors. I don't hear anything other than that. But what has happened, it tends to be everybody's looking for the pastor to kind of give the word of what it's going to be. And what you want to do in a true team environment is to get them talking to each other. So, as a coach, you need to make sure that this is at the forefront of your mind. So, you're intentionally moving the conversation around from team member to team member. So, one of the ways you can do this is to reflect back on the team. So, if a question gets asked of you, coach, what's your opinion about this, or what what do you think we should do? Because that'll come up quite a bit. Remember, you're not the one-stop solution provider. You're trusting the Spirit's work on the team, though there might be a time to give some advice, but be careful about that. You just push it back on the team. So if you get asked, what should we do? You simply ask the team, well, team, based on Alice's question, what do you guys think? It's just a simple way to turn it back to the team, but it's very seductive because we tend to be egocentric and we love being able to give the answers, and we've had a training kind of mentality that it's just very easy, especially if you've been through an experience like that before, based on whatever the question is, just to give an answer. But I think the healthier way forward as a coach is to get the team talking to one another. Now, I wanted to give you some general team concepts. These are things I've learned, things I've borrowed through the years, that I think will create the best team environment as you coach them. And we've talked about the first one already. Always be asking a question, what are you up to, Lord? This should be the guiding team question. It should be bathed in prayer. Spend lots of time in prayer with the team, even as the coach. Let them see that. It is about his agenda. And so, what I prayed even before we started tonight is I have a presentation, I have an agenda, but if some questions get lobbed or the Spirit wants to do something differently, then have your way. And as a coach, please always let that be your guide. Secondly, uniformity that insists, or unity that insists on uniformity, isn't unity. It's just a cheap counterfeit. And I think we all get that, but it just needs to be stated again that if you're just trying to get everybody to say the same thing, if we're looking for yes people on the team, that's not going to be the healthiest team environment. You don't want that as a coach. You want to have vibrancy in the diversity of the process, so that people are really wrestling with issues. So in a case of a pastoral team or a church plant team, they're dealing with some big issues. Many of our churches now are considering, how do we get in on what the Lord's doing? He's on mission. He sent the church on mission. So what does that look like? Those are big topics to wrestle with, and you want to make sure that there's diversity in the commentary so that we can come to the best way forward as a team. Thirdly, a potential roadblock for team unity is the notion of meeting as infrequently as possible. And I've seen this eat away at the effectiveness of teams so often, where everybody on the team is busy, and people are busy. You guys are busy. You may be doing multiple things right now, even as you're listening. That's okay. But the thing that you can't do is just say, we'll only meet when necessary. Necessary just isn't going to cut it. You're not going to get to where you want to go meeting as infrequently as possible. So as a coach, you need to remember this dynamic, and that's part of level setting the expectations on the front end. Frequency of meeting, how the meetings are going to look. Are they always going to be face to face, or how's that going to take place, and how frequently will they happen? That's a really key point to settle on the front end as best as possible. The best teams are masters of mid-course correction. They hold loosely to plans and write in pencil. And again, it's saying, have your way, Holy Spirit. So if the agenda changes, or if the stated goal that we thought it was going to be 3 months ago is now something different, we're not doing it on a whim. This is really a consensus led by the Holy Spirit. Then, then have at it. Um, it you don't want to continue to force something that, for whatever reason, the Spirit's not leading you to. So you want to hold loosely to those plans. This is a big one. As a coach, make sure the team leader, which may be the pastor in most of our contexts, presents first draft, not final proposals. Um, of course, in our past history, um, pastor would say it's this way, and it was almost a thus saith the Lord. And again, I love our pastors. All of us are pastors on this call. But as pastors, as coaches, if we have an idea, we need to present it as, I've been considering this, and I really want to get your thoughts and opinions about whatever this is. Don't come in saying, this is what I believe God has given us to do, without any sort of consultation and collaboration with other team members. I think you just set yourself up for some heartache, or people not wanting to participate, not fully participate down the road. Here's a team core value. If you don't have the guts to speak up on the front end, you don't have the right to complain on the back end. And you handle this however you feel like you need to, but just again, really invite people to speak up. If there's something in their spirit that says the way we're taking this, where this is going, it doesn't settle right in my spirit. Speak up, but don't backstab after a team decision has been made. And of course, we've probably all seen this play out in a team format, and just how hurtful and destructive that can be. Ephesians 4:1-6 is a great theme passage for team unity, respect, and the focus on what truly matters, because ultimately the Lord wants unity. He values it highly. It's ours in the Spirit, and let's maintain it throughout the coaching of the team, and fight for it when we have to. And of course, when we get to conflict, you really have to fight for it. And as a coach, whatever you can do to help the team nurture a joyful camaraderie will pay rich dividends throughout the process. Just a real joy to be together, that there's genuine fellowship and communion, sharing of communion, all of those things. That time is well spent for the team. Now, that may seem crazy, but again, I want you to invite you to look at conflict as a potential ally. Now, what you're going to have to help people understand is, if there is any conflict on the team, that what's being focused is, are you focused on your position when you're arguing, or the desired outcome and how to get there? That's the key thing as a coach. If team members are disagreeing on what should be done, are they just defending their turf? And we know the kingdom of self is heavily defended territory. Are they just defending their turf, or are they wrestling in a healthy manner, in a loving way, because they really genuinely believe that they have an outcome that will really work for the team? And as a coach, you're helping them discern that by asking skillful, artful questions. So here are some thoughts in terms of navigating team conflict, and I'd certainly really would appreciate your thoughts on this. Um, if you disagree, that's fine. I want to wrestle with some of this thing too. But I'll just say this before we look at these. Um, I have seen conflict wreck a team, and I've seen conflict bring a team together. And that's why I said that first statement. Conflict isn't meant to be won as in a victory for the individual. It's meant to make the team one. That as we wrestle through the diversity of opinion, of thought, that we come together and eventually have a consensus of a way forward. Deal with conflict as quickly as possible. And I would invite you to do it through questions, not so much in the way that of making statements. In other words, if somebody feels like um, they say, well, we've come to this, I feel like we're coming to this particular outcome or goal, but we've tried that before and it didn't work. Um, you as a coach may know some of the details of what happened in the past, and it would be very easy for you to say, well, the reason it didn't work is because we didn't have the right people on the team, just for instance. Now, if you've facilitated teams, which you have, and coach teams, you know what's going to immediately happen. Either one of two things: either you're going to shut that person down, or number two, they're going to get defensive, and it's going to raise their anxiety immediately because you answered back with a statement. Even though your statement may be true, it's not going to be the healthiest way forward for the team to manage that conflict. And a way to do it through question instead of making the statement is, well, what about what happened in the past made it not work? So put it back on that person and talk them through it. If we were going to move forward with that same resolution, what should we do differently this time? You see the difference? Instead of dealing with the conflict with a statement, you're going back to your coaching role and asking good questions that gets everybody in on it because they're all thinking about the answers to the question you're giving them, but do it through the questions as much as possible. Be open. If a team member has issues, they need to be expressed openly and not allowed to fester. And we've all been on teams where things festered. They showed up in maybe passive aggressive ways, in ways that sabotaged, what the team was trying to accomplish. And it took so much more energy and effort on the back end to try to unravel all the hurt that was caused weeks, months ago in a particular meeting. Having a meeting of the minds is really, really important. Just an example of this. I was on a pastoral team where one of the other team members, I'm an idea guy. I like my ideas. They're my babies, and I want you to like my ideas. You probably met people like me, and they frustrate you at times. But I would share an idea, and it felt like this other person was just tearing down my ideas every time they were proposed to the team. And it was so frustrating because I know I couldn't have all bad ideas, but as to save you from the long story, what we finally realized is that, and this was much later, but what we finally realized, it was just our communication style. This other person really was for me. They wanted my ideas to be successful. They saw the validity of them, but they have such a mind, a methodical, kind of thoughtful mind, a process mind, that they could see the gaps immediately, maybe where there were details left out or where it could potentially fail. And that's what they would bring up immediately. They were for the idea, but it just didn't feel like it in a moment. Unfortunately, we didn't find this out until much, much later. And we both experienced frustration along the way. So anytime that you can get some of that stuff out in the open early on, you're going to save yourself a lot of headache on the back end. Proactive active listening, or practice active listening rather. Always paraphrasing, re-paraphrasing, clarifying, re-clarifying, and questioning. You can't ask enough questions. And as a coach, I just invite you again to stay in coach mode as much as possible. And that's why it's important with the team to let them know what the coaching relationship looks like, your function as a coach, that you're going to be asking a lot of questions. You're not going to be giving the answer. You're going to allow the team to shape the answers by the leadership of the Holy Spirit, but you're going to bring that about through asking the questions. So you just have to be careful. It gets seductive if you feel like you have the answer, just to kind of thrust your opinion in there, but as much as possible, stay in coach mode. When the team's in conflict, focus on actionable solutions, not belaboring what can't be changed. I was facilitating a team once where one of the team members wanted to always talk about the past and hurts that had been realized through personal relationships with people in the church. And inevitably, whenever this person brought up the past, you could just feel the energy just leak out of the entire team because it's not anything that could be done. And even though many of us had spent time with this person one on one or as a team in other settings, when it became a team kind of business meeting, if you will, a church business meeting, it just it it was not the best environment to experience in that sort of meeting. So try to focus as a coach on what you can do about the solutions. And of course, there's a time to deal with hurts and grievances. And yeah, exactly. You can't move forward if you're looking into the rearview mirror. That's well said, Ted. Absolutely. Keep the team issues within the team. And of course, the only exception is as much as possible if it's meant to be shared with the whole church or it requires ecclesiastical escalation. And of course, we're talking about conflict where it might require that. And you guys are fully aware of that. But as much as you can, keep things within the team because that builds team respect. And I tell you, it's powerful when you have that as a core value that this is going to be a safe place. We may experience conflict. No, we're going to experience conflict. We're human beings. We see things differently at times. But if we do it together as a team and we work through that, man, that can be powerful. Again, encourage diverse points of view, insist on it, and while keeping everybody's eye on the vision and where you're going and moving forward. But while you're doing that, insist on that honest dialogue. Don't let conflict get personal. Stick to the facts, Jack, the issues, and not personalities as much as possible. And this is, as a coach, you really can influence the team in this way. You're keeping it focused on what it needs to be focused on. And this last one is huge. And again, I'm talking with pastors. You know this. This is basic stuff in some ways. Um, but pray as a team. And if possible, have members in conflict pray for one another. And I just simply wrote here, I have witnessed in team conflict that it becomes redemptive instead of destructive, beautiful instead of brutal, and healing instead of wounding when people who are at odds with one another, they pray for one another. I've been, I don't know why I should be astonished at God's grace, but I have at times been astonished when it seemed like we were at an impasse. And yet when people have prayed for one another, it's as if their heart just softens right in the immediacy of the prayer. When they hear another person pray for their family, for their loved ones, for their heart and mind and joy, I mean, it just something happens. And so, as a coach, there's a chance for you to facilitate that. I'm looking at Jeff's. Has there been a running thread of comments during this meeting? So far, I have only seen 2 comments. If not, no problem. No, that's either I'm boring or I've covered everything well, which I doubt that's the case. But there's only been a couple of questions. Matter of fact, let me stop here and just give space. Yeah, you demand whatever. No, thanks, Dave Gilbert. I appreciate it. Um, I'll buy you an ice cream the next time I'm up in Pennsylvania. Let me go ahead and unmute your mics if you have any questions. This would be a good time to stop and ask them. And I'd really love your feedback. If nothing else, just tell me how things are going so far. All right. It's a quiet bunch tonight. Just going to be my voice on the recording. Maybe that's the way you wanted it. See. Carrie says, going well, lots of good stuff and ideas to take back to my team, even though I'm not in coaching role with them. You are coaching more than you think, Carrie. And what I have found, and I know you know this, but you can even coach if it's not your designated role. If you're asking really good questions of the team, you're kind of doing the ninja or the under the radar stealth kind of coaching. And boy, that's really good. Mark says good stuff. Thank you, Mark. Randy, see, Randy says good material. You're doing well. I'd like a copy of this slide in particular. Yeah, I'd be glad to do that. And Yes, I am getting them now. They open up for me one at a time for each person. They're isolated each person, so I don't see them all at once. And Dave Gilbert says, "Me too" on the slides. Jeff, you got a question?
Yeah, I don't see any comments that are coming through. So when I send my message to the group, it came to you, but I'm not seeing anything else. That's what I was asking.
I see. What about everyone else? Are you seeing the group messages, or are they just coming to me? Looks like no, not seeing the group messages, just you. Okay. Huh. Well, that's something I'll get fixed for the next time that we do this. I appreciate you bringing it up, Jeff. I didn't realize that. So that's why I'll just go ahead and read. Not seeing group messages. Randy says, Mark Queener says, just my messages. Carrie says, nope. When I type in the group, it just goes to me. So sorry about that, but I'll just, as I see the questions pop up, I will make sure to read them out loud, and then we will get that fixed for next time. And Randy says the same. Only one message from you, Anthony. Sorry about that, guys, but thanks for letting me know. And again, this is the first time we've used this system. I really like it, but we'll tweak it for the next time. Mark says you'll have to mute your mic when someone talks. Feedback during Jeff's comments. Okay, good stuff. So just like in the video, I'll mute my mic. That's excellent to know. It's okay. I like this system so far. Randy said, Jeff Broadnax, I also only see myself on the call. Is there a way who can see who the others are on the call? Is that the case for all of you? Because I see everybody. And again, I assume, everybody, it sounds like you can only see one person. Wow. Again, great. I'm glad that came up. I'm sorry that you experienced it the way that you did this time. But just so you know, you probably know by now because I've said their names or their commentary. But Dave Gilbert, Ted Johnston, Kerry Smith, Mark Queener, Jeff Broadnax, Randy Bloom, Tom Smith. I think Charles Fleming may be listening in as well, though not showing up. He was going to go a little more stealth. He just wanted to see the platform and how it worked. So those are the folks. Tom Smith, he has raised his flag, so I will unmute you. Tom, go ahead.
I just sent you a note. It was mostly for you, not everybody. Can you read it?
Yeah, Tom, let's see. No, for some reason your notes are not showing up. So maybe you can stay on a little bit after, and we can talk about it because for some reason your chat notes, you're the only one that's your notes aren't showing up. And I'm just going to look through the messages real quick to see. So all of you are just seeing yourself and me. Ted Johnston has brought up a second computer, I see, and but we'll get that situated for the next time so that everybody can see everybody else on the call. Thanks for that feedback. Now, in terms of our GCI context, just a couple of thoughts. I mentioned this before. I think it deserves a repeat. As a coach or a team leader, refrain from being the one-stop solution provider. It's easy because as a coach, many of you are experienced pastors. You know the GCI context. You know what's going on denominationally. You have plenty of insight, experience out the wazoo. But stay in coach mode instead of team trainer, if you will. And that is facilitate through well-formed questions, and the team will experience far better results, and the multiplication of leaders will occur. And this is a big deal. This is the part that sometimes gets missed, that it's actually through the forming of questions and letting people discover their own answers that they're really learning. I mean, that's where growth takes place, when they're actively participating in the meeting instead of essentially what I'm doing right now in this webinar, where I'm just kind of regurgitating information. It's a knowledge dump, so to speak. But in a coaching environment, the best thing is to really engage the entire team. And even though it may take more time on the front end than just to simply give an answer, the dividends that it will pay long term are far superior, I believe. If you're coaching a senior pastor or a church planter, this is a big one. This is about multiplication. If you're coaching a pastor or a planter, it's crucial to equip them to coach their team, their pastoral team, planting team, advisory council, et cetera, the ones that they are mentoring, the ones that they are coaching. Don't hesitate to ask questions about this ad. How are you going to share that with the person that you're coaching, or how's this going to translate the way that you work with your team? Get them, as much as you can, constantly get them thinking about the folks that they are working with. That helps in the multiplication of their efforts. Any thoughts on that? Anybody want to raise their flag, in terms of what I said about the GCI context? Randy says it might be good to explain why a pastor would work to coach their team as the primary leader for a church. That's a good question, Randy. The reason you'd want to coach is, again, the multiplication of leaders, number one. Number two, I think you come to better team solutions when you're working together as a team and getting their thoughts. Because here's what I have found, and I've seen this happen before. I mean, this is not a GCI issue. This is just a humanity issue, that we like to tell people what we know. And what we know may have worked in the past, but that may not be the best solution in the here and now. And ultimately, it may not be what the Spirit is up to in this particular scenario with this particular team. And so it requires great humility to just take a step back from it and to engage the team. At some point you might want to interact with the team. You might want to engage them and let them know what has been done in the past. But I would certainly provide the caveat that that's what we did 5 years ago. The Lord may be up to something new and fresh and vibrantly different than He was in the past. But ultimately, I think it is about multiplying leaders. And when you're coaching a team and you're showing them what coaching looks like, a couple of things happen. Number one, well, all the things I've already mentioned happen, but two specific things is they see coaching modeled, which is going to help them as team leads, because often your pastoral team, they're ministry leaders. And so you know how this trickles down. You're helping them to understand. And number two, people tend to coach themselves better. I will tell you, since I've immersed myself in coach training, I do a far better job of asking myself good coaching questions. Sometimes I don't want to ask myself those questions, but I'm much better at it because I can self-coach. Now, I still need a coach, and I'll always choose to have a coach. But when you're modeling coaching, even as the pastor or team lead, people get a feel for what that looks like, and they'll ask themselves, okay, I know what I want to do, and I know I'm right here now, and there's a gap between where I am and where I want to go. So what's the one thing I can do next to help me get there? That's a simple coaching question, but now I can ask that of myself. Mark Queener said, Jesus said, "Who do you say I am?" He didn't just declare it. Well said, Mark. I love that question, and I reference it quite a bit. You can go online, by the way, and this is a helpful exercise. Go online and type in questions that Jesus asked, and just start looking through that list. One of the great coaching questions, and we went over this in Ohio, is when in John 1, when I think it was John and Andrew were sitting at John the Baptist's feet, and he pointed them to Jesus, and they started following them, and Jesus looked back and said, "What do you want?" That's a powerful coaching question. We may never preach that passage and talk about it in a coaching context, but that's what happened. It's getting to the heart of the matter. What is it you really want? As a coach coaching a team, what is it as a team we really want? What is it the Spirit really wants? When he asked the invalid at the pool at Bethesda, "Do you want to be well?" I mean, we may not think of that as a coaching question, but again, it's a powerful question that really got to the heart of the matter in the way the person hearing the question didn't even understand in the moment. So Thanks for bringing that up, Mark. Jesus is the coach. I mean, you talk about the man. He just asked powerfully insightful questions along the way. Carrie says the importance of well-formed questions cannot be overlooked. I've done a lot of asking with my current team, but I've often gotten silence. I think as I learn and practice better questions, I'll begin to see growth and desired results personally and as a team. Thank you for sharing that, Carrie. That's so true. And we're all in this learning process together. I find myself at times asking multi-layered questions. I ask three questions in the same sentence, so I need to choose brevity. Um, so we're all in this together. So continue at it. And I will say this: it's kind of hard in this format in a webinar, but when you're face to face with a team, when you ask a question, be okay with silence after you're asking the question. Give people time to think, because if you're asking a really good question, doesn't it stand to reason that people need a little bit of time to process something that's maybe multi-layered, a thoughtful question? So be okay with silence. Let them sit with it for a little bit, and before you try to. Not that you do this, Carrie. I'm just saying I've seen this done where we try to fill in the empty space really too quickly, and don't give people a chance to really let it resonate with them. Yeah, and then Ted said silence is a powerful question. Yes, yeah, yeah, it's amazing. Ted teaches a counseling class, and he's probably seen this and done this many times and learned the power of it. You ask the person you're counseling or coaching a question, and people give an answer, especially if it's a quick answer. Just sit there in silence and let them sit in their silence after they ask it or answer it, and generally they'll start to dig a lot deeper and then you'll really get to the heart of the matter. So silence is a beautiful thing in the coaching process. So in kind of wrapping this up and just kind of looking back at what we've looked at, it's a little bit after 9, so I do want to get this wrapped up. R plus P plus I, relationship plus purpose plus intentionality. The who plus the why plus the how, what, when. That equals coaching. And the intentionality piece must be there, as any piece of it. But I think in our context, we've done the R and the P pretty well. We just really need to press in on intentionality to help a team and help an individual move forward. Use a coach model, whatever it is. I've chosen a coach model from Keith Webb. And by the way, at Mark Queener's recommendation is a good thought. I didn't even realize he had them. Keith Webb, who wrote the book, The Coach Model, has these little cheat sheet cards. They're like business cards that have the coach model image on the front side, and then questions in each category, 3 powerful questions in each category. So you can just keep it there on your desk as you're coaching someone and refer to it very easily. I'm going to send each of you one of those cards. And so maybe you can drop me a line in an email even right now, or as soon as this is over, with your address, and I'll make sure that gets out to you. Establish clear ground rules for the team. Ensure that there is an alignment along the way. Clarify, re-clarify, paraphrase, re-paraphrase. Make sure everybody's moving in the same direction. I mean, you can imagine the example of being in a canoe. You're in the stern as a coach, and people are rowing, and one's paddling forward, one's paddling backwards. You have to make sure we're all rowing the same direction, and get the team members talking to each other is really, really key. Here are some resources, just a couple I wanted to make you aware of. Steve Ogney, who's the other co-author of Transformational Coaching, and we talked about this book. I recommended it when we were in Ohio, but he does an outstanding coaching team leaders teleclass, and he really focuses on the missional element of coaching a team. And if you're someone that wants to pursue accreditation through the International Coach Federation, it will count as almost 8 class hours. It's all online in a webinar format, and there's a cost associated with it. So there's the hyperlink, and I'll send this out to you guys, the presentation, so you can look at that on your own time if you desire to pursue that. But he does an excellent job. And then the second resource is a book I read a few years back. It's not necessarily designed as a coaching book, but you're going to find all sorts of great coaching principles when working with teams. It's called Sticky Teams, Keeping Your Leadership Team and Staff on the Same Page. And it's written by a pastor named Larry Osborne. Again, that is Sticky Teams. So what I thought we would do now, before we get there, just real quickly, if you would drop me a line, and it'd just be best to do it right away so you don't forget it. Just shoot me an email or drop a line in the chat box about what did you learn, if anything, and feel free to tell me if it was worth your time or not. Number two, what would you improve? How would you improve the webinar, and what would you do to improve it? And the Fuse format. Any thoughts on that? And you've already given me a couple really good pointers about muting my microphone and making sure we can see who else is on the call. So thank you for that feedback. Any additional feedback, I welcome it. And then just comments on the overall experience. And again, for those of you that are seeking GCI credentialing, this was the one webinar that I was going to do, but I'm going to offer additional webinars as we go. But the next process, if you've already done your coaching triads, we'll do the exit interviews. You and I can schedule that individually. We'll just take time to talk about the process if you want to move forward, if you're ready to coach, because I can tell you this, in our GCI context, we're going to have many coaching opportunities come along. The GCI intern orientation is next month in North Carolina. We've got our largest crop of interns ever. So there's going to be several coaching relationships needed there. We have 3 pastors in the Dallas area that at the end of this year will have good plans written up for their churches that will need coaching, and will need coaches for that. So there's going to be multiple opportunities for us. So we want to find out who really wants to move forward and have that take place. So let's see here. Dave Gilbert says, what did I learn? I learned I needed this 31 years ago when I started ministry. Great job. Thanks, Dave. Yeah. I mean, the great thing is it's never too late, and we're all in this together. And it's a great time to be a coach in GCI, because as we talked about in Ohio, to establish a coaching culture, the quickest way to do it is to get the people that are the leaders of your organization supportive, and all of our leaders are supportive of ministry coaching, and they're fully behind what we're doing, and that makes our job so much easier. And so our coaching relationships are only going to grow. And so the way I wanted to end, just real quickly, and I'm going to unmute your mics and I'll mute mine, but if you just had just one sentence, any aha, oh no, duh, wow, or oh really happened during this session, I'd love to hear it. Again, it can just be one sentence. I'll go ahead and unmute you guys.
Asking questions to resolve conflicts.
Thanks, Mark. That's a good one. Asking questions to resolve conflict. Anyone else?
Keep the team talking to each other.
I was just going to say that.
To me. It's got to be quick, Pastor.
Good deal. Anyone else? All right. That's it. Thanks for being a part of it. Love you guys. Hope this wasn't too much of my voice. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording and call it a night.